Margot, and I finished reading The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I know that's not how you pronounce his name, but I couldn't figure it out. The main premise of this book is that you are following a boy who is a shepherd when he starts to have these dreams about finding treasure in the pyramids. But a messenger comes down from God, and he's a king, and he says, listen, those aren't just dreams. Those are omens leading you towards your personal legend. You have to follow them. A personal legend is described basically as one's purpose in life, the thing everyone has to do in order to be at harmony with the universe and fulfill God's work. You follow this boy on his quest and how his path entangles with a bunch of other people following their personal legends as well. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I'd probably give it on a 1 to 100 scale about an 84%. This book was good, and I definitely would recommend it to everyone. But I think where the book was lacking for me was really entertainment value. First off, it's not one of those books where you really get emotionally attached to any of the characters. You don't root for them, you don't feel particularly connected to them, they're not really meant to be relatable. The book is sort of written like a fable. Like, you look at this book and it's meant to teach you something. That itself didn't put me off, but my personal preference for books is the ones where you feel like you can grow with the character or at least have really strong feelings about what they are doing. Kind of on that note, this book is an incredibly fast-paced, and I was surprised by that, especially since it is such a short book. I think that is mainly because what this book is really focused on is the philosophy and kind of the moral inquiry you go through as you're watching the boy's quest. The quest is definitely a vehicle for that. That being said, it was so fascinating from a philosophical perspective to see how this book articulated what God is, what religion is, what the purpose of the universe is, and how everything's connected. That to me I thought was really cool. I wouldn't say there was any parts that were particularly moving, I wouldn't say there was any parts that were particularly relatable, but the book was still incredibly interesting, and when I could sit down and read it, I really did enjoy the story because I did think it was quite interesting and unique. That's all I can really say about this book without giving any spoilers. The next part of the review is going to be spoiler-filled. If you don't want that, click away now. Does meet a lot of people along his journey, but I think my favorite of all of these little interactions was actually the one in the beginning with the glass shopkeeper. He was the only one that really didn't share this strong faith in God and the personal legend. Like, he was the only one who really didn't trust in all of that, and so I thought it was just one of the more different perspectives, but also one of the more relatable ones for me. Like, I liked that take on the philosophy, and also too, it was really wonderful to see this whole plot thread of how following your personal legend isn't only good for your soul, it's good for the great soul and everyone's soul, because it was the only moment where you could really, in my opinion, where you could really see the boy following his own quest affecting everyone else for the better. He did really help the glass shopkeeper get back on his track. There was only one part of this book that I didn't really buy into, and that was the boy's relationship with Fatima, his true love. Now, I understand he needed to have that relationship to understand the language of the world, because as it's articulated in this book, the language of the world is supposed to be love. That's supposed to be the driving energy and heart of the soul of the earth, and that's supposed to be the thing that's linking everyone together. So I did understand why it was necessary to the plot. But that being said, because this book isn't a book where you're really invested emotionally in the characters, I didn't feel connected to the boy, so I couldn't really feel connected to his love for Fatima, so I just didn't really buy it. I don't think you have to buy into it to like the story, but I think I would have liked it more if I could have. There was one part of the book that actually, it was the only part of the book that made me kind of hold the book to my chest and be like, oh my goodness, this book kind of articulated something I've always known perfectly, and I love when I have that moment with the book. It was the one moment that actually did touch me, and the moment that I was like, oh, this book. And it was right after the boy agrees with the alchemist and decides that he does have to leave Fatima. He's still really sad about it because, I mean, obviously he loves her and he doesn't want to leave her, but the alchemist says, if what one finds is made of pure matter, it will never spoil, and one can always come back. If what you had found was only a moment of light, like an explosion of a star, you would find nothing on your return. And that moment really got to me. I live in between two places. I live in London half the time and Connecticut half the time, but then on top of that, I also go to boarding school. So moving around and having to leave people that really got to me. When I do have to leave people and go away from home and miss my friends again, I actually always think about something like this because you learn which connections you have are the exploding stars and which ones are the constant flames. And I feel so lucky to have so many constant flames, but I get where the boy is coming from. There is always that one moment of insecurity right before you leave, no matter how sure you are of any relationship. The illustrations in the book, like there's tons of these throughout the pages, I thought those were really charming and also really well placed because this book is talking about listening to life and how any one moment in life can hold the secret to everything else and how you should be looking out for these omens. So anytime I came across one of these drawings, I was like, oh my goodness, this is like an omen for the story. I should pay attention to it and see about how it relates to the plot. The most exciting scene, in my opinion, was the one where the boy is trying to turn himself into the wind. I also thought that was cool on a philosophical level, but I do have to admit that was probably the only scene in the book in which I was turning the pages fast. I wasn't distracted as I was reading, like I really did just want to know what was happening next. I liked the different personalities. I mean, it's kind of bad, but I kind of almost feel more connected to the wind than anyone else in this book. Like I thought the personality of the desert versus the wind versus the sun was really, really cool. If you did like this book, but specifically you liked the descriptions of the language of the world, I would recommend the book History of Love by Nicole Krauss. History of Love follows 4 different characters' perspectives, and one of the characters, Leo Gursky, wrote a book, and when you see the excerpts of his book, he describes things that seem very much similar to the language of the world. So I think from that philosophical perspective, those 2 books line up well. Although the History of Love has the thing that I thought this book lacked, which was really strong investment in the characters. Although then again, to say this book lacked that investment, I think is the wrong way to put it. I just think that's not what this book was about. It didn't need that because that's not the type of story it was. So that was my review. The next review will probably be Charlotte's, and we'll have more videos up soon. I'll put links to the Instagram and Goodreads in the description. Bye!